My main concern in this regard is that we notice that a trend was set with respect to appropriation warrants and the use of appropriation warrants by the previous administration. In that, from the first appropriation in 1993 of $4,361,040, it appeared that the previous administration made it a habit of coming to the House with estimates, having them approved, discussed and approved by the Parliament, and then seeking to use the area of appropriation warrants to spend additional funds. Well, nothing is wrong with spending additional funds, Madam President. The Finance Act of 1990 clearly makes that provision. And it says, if I may quote in section 6, if at any time it appears to the minister to be necessary that an issue should be made from the public funds of St. Christopher and Nevis, in this case I read Nevis, to defray unforeseen expenditure upon any service, which, being in respect of a new service, is not provided for, and in any act, or two, which shall result in an excess of the sum provided for that service in any act. However, Madam President, it goes on to say that the minister shall submit supplementary estimates for the approval of the Parliament as soon as possible after the issue of a special warrant, and shall, as soon as may be practicable from the date of any warrant authorizing the issue of such sums, introduce into the House an appropriation bill, and on the coming into operation thereof as an act, the said warrant shall cease to have in effect, and issues thereunder shall be deemed to have been made for the purpose of such act, and shall be accounted for in accordance with the provisions thereof. We are debating this bill, Madam President, which goes back a very long way. We're talking about 2002. So it is abundantly clear that the minister at the time, having appropriated the funds, did not seek the approval of Parliament. Neither did the minister bring the matter for discussion so that it could be regularized. And I should make it abundantly clear that all governments, not just the government in Nevis, all governments find it necessary to appropriate funds. But we're looking at what clearly should be a simple housekeeping matter. But it is not nearly as clear as that, because it is my argument that when you look at the trend, that appropriation warrants in Nevis were used by the previous administration to mask a number of things. So we are passing a budget in December of any given year, and then in the year in question, in 2002, a further $13,548,231. This is not an insignificant amount of money, Madam President. And the major concern must be that the approval of the House was never sought in any way. Indeed, the approval of the House wasn't sought for 14 years. That is a matter of major concern. It troubles me, Madam President. And what troubles me more than that is that when you look at some of the matters, like appropriation warrant number 8, for $4.5 million to pay foreign debt servicing. I mean, clearly you must know what the foreign debt is. And if we borrow money, we must make the necessary arrangements to service the debt. But when you look at $4.5 million coming in as an appropriation warrant, it says to me that perhaps it was intentionally done. Maybe not put in the budget, because if you put it in the budget, it would not be a balanced budget. Or it might very well not be a surplus budget. Because I listen to the budget. If I didn't listen to anything else, I listened to the budget. And every year we heard grandstanding and how the budget was balanced, or how there was a surplus budget. And then appropriation warrants to the tune of some $13 million, Madam President. I submit to you that in the year 2002, if you add another $13 million to the budget presented, it would not be a surplus budget. And I'm not very good at numbers, So I called a banker friend of mine in the early hours of this morning. And he said to me, well, you know, the best way to hide figures for a government is by using appropriations. So you make sure that you pass what is a balanced budget or a surplus budget, knowing fully well that you need another $13 million in this case. But do not include it in the budget. Make sure you hide it, come back with an appropriation, and all of that, I am saying to you, Madam President, that can be done. But what we need is a little bit of honesty, a little bit of transparency, a little bit of decency, so that when this is done, the government of the day must follow the instructions. And the instructions are clear. I didn't write them myself, Madam President. They have been here since the Finance Act of 1990. And it clearly says that from the date of as soon as possible as may be practicable, well, as soon as possible from 2002 until the elections of 2006, never came. It never was soon enough. And when you look at the same 2002 appropriation warrant, Madam President, we have national piling $1,150,000, warrant number 4, warrant number 10, national piling another $3 million. So when you add those, Madam President, $4.5 million to $4,150,000, by those 3 warrants alone, you're talking about another nearly $9 million. This is enough to break the budget for 2002 and turn it from what some economists like to say on the internet every day when you hear them, that the government of CCM presented a balanced budget every year. But the tales are different, Madam President, and it troubles me. I will speak more about that later, but save and suffice it to say that having spent the money, I believe that it is time when we come to the committee stage of this bill that the member opposite, who was the Minister of Finance, ought to vote with us, Madam President. He was the Minister of Finance when the money was spent. And as such, I expect that when we hear those in favor, we would hear an aye from the other side. May it please you, Madam President.